Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
Alex, we have 2 weeks of preseason in the books. Just one more left, and we are in the regular season. To all of our listeners, as always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please subscribe to us on the socials. We are on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Threads with the handle at N2EFantasy. What do we have on today's show, Alex?
Today's show, we have our takeaways from each of the preseason matchups. So we can go through game by game and just bring up some of the points that we thought were interesting. So we can start here with the Baltimore-Washington hometown throwdown over here. So we have the Ravens versus Washington, whatever we're calling them. And Sam Howell continues to look good. He looks like he's potentially a starting caliber quarterback in the league, which is great for all the fantasy options there. Terry McLaurin got hurt, as we know. He looked good until he got a toe injury. As we know now, it's just a turf toe. He's probably out 3 to 4 weeks, so it won't be too bad, and we'll see him back soon. The Robinson and Gibson backfield are interesting. It looks like it's going to be close to a 50-50 split. Jeff, I think you think it's going to be more Robinson. I think it's going to be more Gibson because I think they're going to be passing a lot. What do you think about this Washington offense?
Oh boy, so they looked better than I thought they would. It looks like Howell is ready to take the next step. I don't know what the next step exactly means with him yet because he's only had one NFL start, but I think that Howell is ready for prime time. I don't really need to see him in any more matchups. So I don't need to see him in week 3 of the preseason. And I think that McLaurin getting hurt, even though he shouldn't be out too long, kind of solidifies my opinion on that, with the starters really shouldn't play in preseason a ton. But as you said, Robinson Gibson 50-50 split to start the year. But just from their preseason usage, it does look like they do want to lean Robinson a little bit. But you have to remember, this time last year, Robinson was the guy up until he wasn't the guy when he got carjacked and shot, and he actually came back from that super quickly. But we can't act like he was at 100% last year, and I do expect him to show what he really is going forward. And the Ravens preseason streak ends. Dang, dude, like 24 games down the tube last night.
Well, they set the record, I believe. So I think that that's all they needed. But Washington played well. Their backups played well. I don't know. I think the Robinson Gibson thing. It's a new offensive coordinator. He's not attached to Robinson necessarily. He's coming from a Chiefs team that like to pass the ball to backs in the backfield. That's going to be more of a Gibson role, but I think it's kind of neck and neck. Both these guys are going to be usable, and if one of them gets hurt, the other one's in for a monster workload, in my opinion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you never know what's going to happen with cuts or roster moves this time of year. They may be a team that looks for an addition to their running back room through cuts this upcoming year or through trades. There should be a ton of trades over the next week or two.
Yep, that's entirely possible. Let's go ahead and move on to the New Orleans Saints and Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers didn't play any of their starters, and the Saints also played backups, but they have a little bit more interesting backups like Kendre Miller, who was injured, already came back and played. I thought he played very well. A lot of his yardage, though, was on like 2 really big plays. But outside of that, I thought he looked like he still had some electricity. Looked like maybe he's not 100% healthy yet, but he was good enough to play. And I really like A.T. Perry. I thought A.T. Perry played well. Jeff, how do you feel about those guys? How do you feel about the the Chargers running back situation behind Eckler?
So it's really difficult because the Chargers didn't play their starters. So it's really difficult to know who goes where. And it is very difficult to know what they're looking at in the running back room. It does look like Josh Kelly will get the number 2 spot, and it looks like Spiller and Dotson will shake out the back end. The one that I'm most interested in out of those two is Dotson, because we kind of know what Spiller is, and Dotson's a rookie, and we have seen rookies take the league by storm. So there is that. And then we also saw rookie Kendra Miller return, which he kind of returned a lot quicker than we thought he was going to return. What are your thoughts on this, Alex? And any other thoughts on the Saints and Chargers?
I thought it was encouraging that Kendra Miller came back. He's someone that I drafted as a dart throw in a redraft league recently, and I drafted Kamara, so I wanted to make sure I got Kendra Miller as insurance for that. And everyone was like, "Oh, he's hurt! Don't you know he's hurt?" And he played immediately after that, so that was encouraging. And I think he showed some explosive plays and limited action. I think he might actually fill in the first 3 weeks for Kamara, so he might be someone that gets play early. If he plays well enough, he's someone who could supplant Jamal Williams as the number 2 behind Kamara. And then if they move on from Kamara after this year, he could be the primary guy going forward. So I thought it was encouraging for him. And I like A.T. Perry. A.T. Perry got some action. Jameis Winston has played well in the preseason, and he looks like he is one of the better backups behind Derek Carr. So I feel pretty good about the Saints offense all around this year. I know there's some question marks on the offensive line, but overall, I think the weapons and the quarterback play are as good as it's been since they had an aging Drew Brees. So hopefully they're steamrolling ahead. And I know the Chargers, they played your boy Quentin Johnston, who had a few catches there. So he's still getting targets out there. Maybe he supplants Palmer as the number 3. Maybe he stays the number 4 for this year. I don't know, but they're deeper this year than they were last year at wide receiver, and they've had injuries there. So the young guy looks okay for them there. I thought it was a fun preseason game, honestly. Not like the Jaguars and Lions, which only had Bigsby. Bigsby to me was the only bright spot of that entire game. I don't know how you feel about that game.
So I feel like it's important for Bigsby to get the good work in right now to kind of gain a role through 2023. And I do believe his role will grow. But I do believe there is going to be enough on this offense for people to really eat. It could be one of the more surprising, maybe not so surprising, but it could be one of the more higher powered offenses in the NFL this year. And they did add what I believe to be a true number 1 in Ridley. And it kind of lets Kirk settle back into a role where he's not the number 1 anymore. And he might be more productive because he's not the number 1 anymore. And that just might be the way that works. But I just watch Ridley in practice, and I watch his highlight videos and stuff, and he's running routes like he did 2 years ago. So we need to see it in a game. But so far, so good with Ridley.
Yeah, I think Ridley looks like if you can get him at a reasonable price tag, I think he could be a potential wide receiver 1. I don't fully want to buy into it early in early rounds, so I'd be comfortable in the 4th round pulling the trigger on Ridley. I wouldn't want to do it with the first 3 rounds of redrafts. Obviously, in Dynasty, he's worth trading for. I think when it comes to Christian Kirk, I like him more because he's going later, and people think that because he's going to be probably the number 2 option, or at best the 1B option in this offense, that he is less valuable. I don't think so, because last year we look at his stats, and he had 1,100 yards against the number 1 corners for everybody, and now he's going against the number 2 or the slot corner, maybe, in games. He should be able to destroy those guys this year and potentially get more stats or keep the same level. So I'm excited about Christian Kirk. I think he is the one that provides, I should say, the most bang for your buck where he's going. So I prefer rolling with Christian Kirk over Ridley, but I can't blame anyone for going Ridley, especially if he's a good price point.
Absolutely. As we were talking about, you might be able to get a deal on, we're talking about on a previous podcast, you might be able to get a deal on Mixon, and you might be able to get a deal on Ridley. You might be able to get them in back-to-back rounds, and you might be able to round out a team after a really good first round the rest is history. But back to Bigsby, he should have a role that grows in this offense. And I don't think that it will cut ETN out. I think ETN will eat as well. And this could be an offense that produces 2 fantasy relevant running backs, because I do think that they have enough of a workload to be able to distribute between the two. Because if you remember last year, we were looking at this, and it was a James Robinson and ETN split. So we're looking at that going into last year, and I think there's plenty for this offense to be able to eat.
Well, I've learned that Doug Peterson likes to use 2 running backs, and he hasn't had a running back that finished in the top 15. So I'm still low on ETN, or lower than other people anyway, and I'm high on Bigsby. I think Bigsby can still be had in the later rounds of your drafts. So Bigsby is someone I would target.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can move on to the next matchup here, and that would be the Miami Dolphins versus the Houston Texans. It's not a lot on the scoreboard for the Texans, but it is very encouraging that Stroud improved from his week 1 semi-disaster, and he actually looked much more comfortable in the pocket, like he was actually able to dissect the coverage a little bit more. Hopefully, I kind of hope that he plays a little bit in the 3rd preseason game and continues to make strides, because I want him to get some reps in. Don't want him to play too much because I don't want him to get hurt, especially since they traded so much to get him. The offensive line, minus a couple of their starters, has still been pretty brutal for the run game with Houston. Hopefully they have all their starters for week 1, so that we can get good return from Dameon Pierce, or you guys who might have gone with the 0 running back strategy and gotten Devin Singletary in late mid rounds. Hopefully those guys can return for you. Other than that, the ball was pretty much spread around to all the different receivers there. And on Miami's side, they really Devon Achane got some play early, but he hurt his shoulder. Salvin Ahmad looked like an identical clone to Achane, and he got a really long 65-yard run. At this point, any of these running backs could get a go. It might be a 4-way split. I'm not sure how it's going to shake out, but you could get Mostert or Ahmad or Jeff Wilson. You can get any of these guys probably pretty late in drafts, and one of them might pan out for you. And Jeff, one of your guys, Braxton Berrios, got a touchdown with Miami, so I'm sure you're happy about that. How do you feel about this matchup, and what do you want to pinpoint on here?
So let's see here. With Achane, the injury obviously isn't good. And let's not forget Myles Gaskin is still on the roster. So there is technically 5
Oh my gosh.
able-bodied running backs on this roster, which is kind of crazy. As far as the Texans offense, I know you keep saying this is the preseason, but 186 total yards does have me a little bit worried. And I don't know if you saw a video of this, but I did see video of this. Tua looked like he displayed better control when he was being taken to the ground. So it does appear that he was keeping his head off of the ground while he was being hit. So he might be able to stay on the field more this year. It does at least give a good omen for his head health for 2023.
Yeah, I saw that, and he also turned his head away from contact early in the game too. So he is learning. He was clearly extra coached when it came to avoiding head injuries, and that's very encouraging. I have at least 1 share in Tua in a dynasty league, so I would like to see him healthy and passing to those options there and putting up stats. So for fantasy purposes, I want him to avoid that, and then for him as a person and a player, I want him to avoid head injury. So I thought that was very encouraging.
Absolutely. All right, we got the Bills and the Steelers up next. Were there any takeaways that you had with the Bills and the Steelers?
Oh, the Bills and the Steelers. Well, I think a lot of people got excited about Jalen Warren getting that 1 rush for 62 yards, which was very electric. I think that some people would like to think that he might supplant Najee Harris as the starter at some point. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think they're 2 different style backs. He's more of a big play kind of back. I don't think he could handle a full workload for a season. And Najee's more of like the physically strong power rusher. So I think they complement each other, and I think they're both going to get touches. Calvin Austin, again, looked pretty good. He didn't have the eye-popping stats that he had the week before, but I thought he still played pretty well. Jeff, what are some of the things that you saw?
Yeah, did you see that Kelvin Austin was actually returning kicks and he actually had a really good punt return? So I do believe that he will see the field quite a bit. Jalen Warren does seem to be the handcuff to Harris, and he could press for playing time throughout the year and be a good injury fill in. Fryermuth caught a touchdown, and maybe my bust isn't going to be so big of a bust if he catches touchdowns every week. And what's up with all the second year quarterbacks taking a leap forward? Kenny Pickett joined Sam Howell taking a step forward. Love to see it because better quarterback play means better product on Sundays. Now, I don't know if some of these quarterbacks are taking a leap forward because of the vanilla defenses or if it is because they're actually taking a step forward. Won't know that until the regular season starts and we actually get going. And then, I mean, Kincaid catching balls already, and it does seem like they're going to use him this year. I don't know how frequently, and because we all know what rookie tight ends typically look like, but he was taken in the first round for a reason. The Bills have a need at any type of weapon. So he probably has as good a shot as anybody to get really good stats during his rookie year, or at least get opportunities, I should say.
I thought both starting tight ends on both sides of the field looked good in limited play. Muth, I'm very excited that he actually got a red zone target. That's something that Pittsburgh struggled in last year with a number of players that they couldn't get touchdowns. So hopefully they turn the corner there. And I definitely think that Kincaid looks like he could be a lethal weapon going forward. As far as like the quarterback play, I think that now with all the technology that they have, the tablets, the extra film sessions, maybe better coaching, a lot more veteran players that stick around and step in, whether on a limited coaching basis or as full members of the staff. I think all of it together is just there's way more resources for players now. And if they actually try and work hard at it, I think a lot of these young guys can improve. So I think to me that seems to stick out, and that's probably why. Hopefully, it's not just preseason. Hopefully, it extends into the regular season as well. So I'm excited about all of that, and I am looking forward to a few Steelers this year. I was low on them last year, but I am buying into Steelers this year. All right, Jeff, do you have anything more on this game?
No, I'm getting more and more antsy for the regular season to start because I don't expect us to get a lot of takeaways with the third week of the preseason, but we'll see what happens. Actually, next Tuesday is a big day though. It's the cut down day where we go from 90 to 53, so we're going to see a lot of these players, some surprises that end up without a job or on practice squads.
Yep, and that's a big day for Jeff. He's got to block out his calendar so he can update his spreadsheet.
I have a draft that day. That stinks.
Yep. All right, so we can move on to the Bears and the Colts matchup, which was kind of head scratching to me that they did not play Anthony Richardson or Justin Fields. I was sitting there watching the game, shaking my head, mumbling to myself, and my wife asked me, "What are you doing?" I'm like, the Colts have this quarterback that needs more reps, and they're sitting him, and I don't know why. And Justin Fields needs more reps, in my opinion, too, and they didn't play him either. So I was kind of befuddled by that decision. And why would you even put yourself in the position where your backup quarterback can go 13 for 15, 107 yards and a touchdown, and look good, and have some fans want to put in a veteran over the rookie? On the Chicago side, I think Roshan Johnson continues to look good, and he should be the RB2. I don't know if they're going to pull the trigger on it, but they absolutely should. There was an image today on X, formerly known as Twitter, that had Roshan and Matt Forte together. And I was like, yep, Roshan's going to be the guy pretty soon, Jeff. I might have to trade my share of Herbert now while it's still high. How
That
did
is
you
true.
how did you feel about all of these topics and the game in general?
So I do think that the Colts know what Anthony Richardson is at this point. No sense in getting him damaged or wrecked in the preseason. This is definitely going to be a year of growth, and that worries me for his future, as we've talked about on previous podcasts. But Minshew went 13 for 15, 107 and a touchdown. I've always loved Minshew, and I do believe that he always plays at a good to great level when he actually plays. And Roshan will be the RB2 in my estimation to start the year. Herbert and him could make quite a tandem this year. I do think Fields
Yeah,
takes a
that's.
step back from rushing.
I mean, one would think that he'd scale it back a little bit if he has running backs who he can hand it off to that are competent, and especially if he improved his actual pocket presence and can pass further down the field. So we'll see how that offense plays out. I'm a big fan of Roshan. I do have Herbert shares as well. So I am excited about the Bears. I'm a little bit nervous that a lot of the big plays have been short yardage throws from Justin Fields. I'd like to see him actually throw it on target down the field and make me feel a little bit more comfortable about the offense. But they just had an injury at guard, so hopefully they can fill that and it doesn't affect the run game or the pass protection.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the Buccaneers and the Jets. Mostly backups in for this game as well, but did you come away with any takeaways from this game?
For me, continuing to see Zach Wilson be consistent is just me as a personal thing. I like to see him improve, even though he probably won't play this year behind Aaron Rodgers. Outside of that, it's just seeing how these backup running backs do, and I like to see Sean Tucker out there for the Bucks. He's someone that I think could win the starting running back job over White. Trey Parker, it's nice to see him get a touchdown out there since he will probably be filling in as the third wide receiver. Jeff, what were your takeaways out of this game? Oh, also, I'm sorry. Kyle Trask actually had a pretty decent game. So that's encouraging. All right, now Jeff, what are your takeaways here?
Kyle's still not the starter. It's going to go be the Bake Show. I don't even think they're going to be able to give us a ton for Hard Knocks this week unless something happened in training camp, which I have been following along, which Zach Wilson's actually been surprisingly one of the better parts of Hard Knocks and watching his growth and development. And I do think it really does help to have the pressure off of him this year because now we can actually see if he can take a step forward and actually become a NFL starting quarterback. The Jets, they went with Darnold and then Wilson, and I just feel like they keep jamming quarterbacks into that spot when the quarterback's not ready yet, and there's really no development path either. So I just think that this is actually really smart that they brought Rodgers in, and Rodgers has also been a pleasure to watch on Hard Knocks.
I haven't started yet, but I will probably binge them all in one day at some point.
Worth it.
So, all right. Well, we can move on to the all red matchup with the Chiefs and Cardinals. Jeff, what were your takeaways from that matchup?
There really wasn't much going on in that game. I did see the Chiefs played their starters the first drive, but I'm not going to sit here and say draft Kelsey, draft Mahomes. It did look like Rashee Rice was fed during this game. I do believe most, if not all of it, came after the starters were out of the game. But again, we were talking earlier about throwing in players just to see how they perform, and it looks like he performed kind of like Bigsby did a little bit earlier with the Jaguars. So I do think it bodes well for him to gain a role as the season goes on. I just wouldn't expect him to have a role to start the year off.
Yep. So from the Cardinals side, I like Clayton Tune. He's a quarterback that I highlighted on my pre-draft process. He's from University of Houston, so I obviously like him for that reason too. He looks pretty decent for a rookie. Not perfect, but a lot of these rookie quarterbacks haven't been exactly exceptional, especially the earlier round ones. I thought Rashee Rice looked really good with the Chiefs. I think that he may come along faster than some people expect. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a huge factor right away this year, but he looks like someone who could be a threat in the near future, so either this year or next year, to being maybe the guy or the number two, one of those spots. So I think he looks better than Justin Ross or Justin Watson for them for sure. It looks looks like they keep trying to put Clyde Edwards-Helaire out there, and I don't think he still hasn't been successful. Oh man,
uh,
this guy,
you laugh so you
this
don't
guy.
cry.
Oh, I mean, it reassures me that I got rid of him. And it reassures me I made the right decision. You worried me when you had him as one of your sleeper options, but
He's definitely a
no,
post type sleeper. I don't know if he'll get the opportunity, and I don't know if he'll be able to run away if he gets that opportunity either.
the only two guys that you can draft with confidence is Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce at this point. Everyone else is still a mystery.
Absolutely.
All right. So we've got the Patriots and the Packers. So we wanted to see how the two quarterbacks, first and foremost, played, right? So I think that Jordan Love has still played pretty solid. Maybe not spectacular, but still pretty solid. I don't know if it's just a vanilla offense or if he's just maxed out at a game manager level, but he still doesn't look like he's hurting the Packers. So it's not like he's bad at this point. Mac Jones is kind of in the same situation. We would like to see him play lights out and justify his first round selection as well. So far, they don't really wow us in the preseason, but they're doing just enough to keep their jobs here. Outside of that, Ramondre got a touchdown. It's good to see. Zeke didn't play in this matchup. And Jeff, looks like the game ended due to an injury. Do you want to talk about that and your other takeaways?
So, another game that ends in injury, but I guess it ended more in injury because A, this game was chippy, and B, like, what's the point of continuing to play in the preseason? I do think if this was a regular season game, this would have continued. And here we are with two young quarterbacks. It does look like Love has a shot to be better than Mac Jones. And it does look like he's developing chemistry with Watson in practice, Dobbs in the preseason games, and even rookie Reed. He's got a lot of talent, a lot of young talent around him.
And Musgrave too.
Yeah,
Musgrave got a few targets.
He got two tight ends. He got Kraft as well, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So he has 4 or 5 1 to 2 or rookies to 1 year weapons right now. So there's going to be some growing pains this year for Jordan Love, but it doesn't seem like the game is too big for him. Like, do I know if he's skilled enough to be a good, great, elite Hall of Fame quarterback, something like that? I don't know where his skill level is going to put him, but it doesn't seem like the game is too big for him. So it does look like he'll take some strides this year. I am very non-committal to Mac Jones. Like, I mean, he just exists for me. There's nothing that I particularly love about his game, and there's nothing that I particularly hate about his game. He's actually, to me, one of the more boring quarterbacks to watch in the NFL.
I kind of feel the same way about Jordan Love. I think Mac Jones just shouldn't be on the Patriots, but that's neither here nor there. I did think that it was interesting. To me, the best Patriots wide receivers, both of their initials are KB. So Kayshawn Booty, the rookie, and Kendrick Bourne seem to be, in my opinion, the two best wide receivers throughout preseason and camp. I think Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster, both of whom were given a bunch of money, have been rather lackluster to date, which is very disappointing because those are two of the bigger targets at the wide receiver group and the guys who traditionally, those type of guys, would have emerged as the guy, and neither one of them has done it. Hunter Henry also didn't look spectacular in this matchup. I will say that on the Packers side, I really like Luke Musgrave, and Luke Musgrave has been one of the favorite targets of Jordan Love. They do have Tyler Kraft. Tyler Kraft has not been targeted nearly as much as Luke Musgrave, but Luke Musgrave has been with the starting unit every time they have a tight end for the most part. So I really like him, and he's going very late in drafts. So in redrafts, you can snag him probably close to the last round.
Absolutely, and it's always worth those dart throws towards the end of the draft.
All right, so we can talk about the Broncos and San Francisco 49ers. Jeff, Why don't you start with your takeaways? And I know you got a pretty good comment coming up soon.
Well, Brock Purdy returned to the lineup, which was kind of crazy. Russell Wilson played less than expected, and I do believe that is a good omen. And for the reason that I think if he was struggling or Sean Payton thought that he was struggling, I do think Sean would have left him out there a little bit longer. So I think the fact that he came out of the game quicker, I think that's actually a good omen for him. And yeah, I think Purdy played good. I think Lance played good, and I think he's on display right now. And I think Jaleel McLaughlin is climbing up the depth charts for the Broncos. Like, is P. Ryan going to have to watch his step and potentially get past? It's possible. What are your thoughts?
I think Jaleel is still the third running back here. And I think P. Ryan came in every single third down and most of the passing down work. So I don't think that that is the case. Although I was encouraged that Javonte got 4 catches and 5 targets. That's very encouraging for his usage. So that's interesting. I thought Tony Jones Jr., who is a former Saints player with Sean Payton, got a lot of usage in this as well. So I'm encouraged that for those of you who like Deebo Samuel, he actually got 2 targets with the starters and he made the most of them. So he looks like, I'm sorry, he got 3 targets, 2 catches, and he actually looked pretty decent in this matchup. And all 3 quarterbacks for the 49ers looked better than the quarterbacks for the Broncos, in my opinion, even though Trey Lance and Darnold both threw interceptions. That's really all I have for that.
Absolutely. We can move on to the next game, the Raiders and the Rams.
Obviously, these are teams that have rookie quarterbacks that I'm interested in. They may not be potentially fantasy relevant this year, although Aiden O'Connell might. It's kind of a battle right now between Aiden O'Connell and, in my opinion, Jimmy Garoppolo, because I think Aiden O'Connell already beat out Brian Hoyer for the number 2 role. He's just played so well. I don't think you can justify Brian Hoyer, who has played horribly so far in the preseason. But Jimmy Garoppolo started, and he completed 100% of his passes to try to fend off the youngster. Zamir White got the first team reps, and he looked really good. So I don't know if they'll necessarily be hurting that bad week 1 if Josh Jacobs doesn't show up. Philip Dorsett got some yardage here. And Keelan Cole, these are guys that were deep sleepers in years past. On the Rams side, Stetson Bennett, he looks all right. I don't think he's a threat for Stafford, not this year at least. Also encouraging to see Zach Evans get a lot of runs. On the passing side, for the Rams, there just wasn't a whole lot. So, Jeff, what are your takeaways from this matchup?
Well, the Rams are really hard to get takeaways for because, as usual, no starters. So I'm just going to take a complete pass on them. Zamir White has to be first up. Amir Abdullah has to be in the mix as well. Hopefully, Josh Jacobs shows up week 1 because I don't really want to see a backfield with the two of them. And then, could O'Connell supplant Jimmy Garoppolo this season? I don't think it's likely, but I know it's in people's mind already.
I just don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is. He's not a quarterback that oh, he's the guy no matter what. I just don't have that feeling about him. Like Stafford at least has earned the credibility, and he has a record of having very good seasons, and it's hard to turn away from him. But Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have that difficult of a contract to get out of. He's only had spot years where he was okay. He struggled with a lot of health issues. He's not necessarily the kind of quarterback that will win you playoff games. So why not give the young guy a chance if he's playing so well? He's on a cheap rookie contract, so you can build around him. I know that matters a lot for an owner with the Raiders that doesn't have the financial resources as other owners out there. And if you have to pay Josh Jacobs, well, if you don't have 35 to 40 million for Jimmy Garoppolo, you can apply that to Josh Jacobs and other positions. So that's why it makes sense to me. But I don't think that they are brave enough to do that week 1.
Absolutely. I don't think so either. And it's probably smart to roll with Jimmy.
We shall see. But we can move on to the Cowboys and Seahawks game. And the Cowboys did not play their starters, but we saw some decent action from the Seahawks rookies as well as your homeboy Deuce Vaughn. They all looked pretty decent. And do you want to start with them with your takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the Cowboys go, they didn't play their starters. This sounds like a broken record at this point, so I'm just going to skip on everything on the Cowboys. I think their offense is going to be just fine. I think that there's worry and concern about Kellen Moore not being there anymore, but I think it'll be okay. I think it's still the same quarterback, same top wide receiver, a better second wide receiver. But as far as the Seahawks, it looked like Geno played a little bit. It looks like JSN actually got hurt in that game. It's really hard to take Pete Carroll seriously at all when he talks about injuries because he is always the over optimist. And it came out earlier that he would be back by week 1, and now it looks like it's trending towards him missing week 1, and that just, it feels like coach speak and the eternal optimist. But I think Kenneth Walker better get back kind of quickly because Charbonnet might run away with this job before Kenneth Walker can even hit the field. So, and this is not really good for Walker because if you remember last year, he entered injured as well, and Penny kind of took the job that way to enter the season. So I think Walker better get healthy and get healthy quick.
So Walker, in my opinion, is out purely on injury avoidance. So I think that he's fine. They're just resting him for precautionary reasons. And I no, I like that's 100% what I think. And because he has a hamstring issue,
I have 2
like that.
hamstrings.
I think he's out for precautionary reasons. I think he's going to start week 1. I think Charbonnet is going to play a lot as well. I think they're going to split. I don't think it's going to be 50-50, but I think that they are going to be the primary rushers. They might even throw DJ Dallas out for some plays as well. I thought that Geno Smith looked good. I think that Cooper Rush actually was the primary starter from last year for Dallas, so he was technically a starter in my opinion for the Cowboys side. Um, Deuce Vaughn, he didn't have as good of a game as the week before, but him just being out there and getting a touchdown, I thought he made a good play on that touchdown. I will say, I think Jalen Tolbert had a really good game, and he's playing for the 4th wide receiver spot for Dallas, which still might be a pretty vital role. And if one of the guys in front of him gets hurt, he might actually be a very, very good contributor for you guys. But right now, for most redraft leagues, he's probably just someone to monitor on the free agency waiver wire pickup spot. So Jackson Smith and Jigba played very well until he got that injury, which I don't know how anyone thought he was coming back for week 1 when the timeline is 3 to 4 weeks and we're 2 weeks away from football. So I don't think that he's going to be rushed back. They already have Metcalf and Lockett. I don't think that there's any need for them to rush him back. You would think that also with someone like with tight ends like Noah Fant and Will Disley that you'd want to get them involved and they can fill in for JSN while he's getting 100%. So I'm not really worried about the offense overall, and I would think that those of you who have JSN weren't going to be counting on him week 1 to contribute anyway. He'd probably be your bench player right now, and you're hoping for more things from him as the season progresses.
Absolutely. And they still have Lockett and Metcalf and a lot going on there.
Yep. All right. Do we want to talk about your Panthers?
Do we want to? No. But will we? Yes. So Panthers and the Giants. And first, I want to start off with a giant positive, with Daniel Jones looking to take a step forward and a connection with his new target in Darren Waller as well. Waller could be tight end 1 at the end of the year. I mean, it's very possible when you go to a new team and you become that team's number 1 weapon. The only thing that obviously worries me about Waller is his health and his ability to stay healthy. But if he can do that, he should at least be a top 4 tight end, if not a top tight end, the top tight end overall. So just things to watch out for. with them. Now, moving on to the Panthers. The Panthers here. So I saw Jonathan Mingo get a reception and bounce off defenders. That's actually really good for future. His counterpart, rookie Jalen Hyatt, looked good as well, catching a touchdown from Tyrod Taylor. And Young will need help with his protection if he's going to be any sort of success his first year, because that offensive line looked pitiful the first 2 years. Like, I don't know, I have another word for it. So what were your takeaways from it? I'm sure you watched some of it. I know I watched most of it.
Well, I thought all of the quarterbacks for the Giants looked fairly decent, if not good, because they all played pretty well. Jalen Hyatt actually mixed in with the ones as well, and he dropped a pass just before his touchdown that would have gotten him a lot of yards too, but he ended up getting the touchdown the very next play. He looks like it might not be as steep a learning curve coming from that Tennessee program into the pros as we thought. Same thing with his former college teammate with Tillman. So we can talk about him with a Cleveland matchup. But these guys look great. Mingo and Hyatt were two guys that we talked about in the pre-draft process for rookie wide receivers. And I'm excited about both of them. In my opinion, they bring something to the table that the veteran receivers already on the roster don't. Hyatt is that field stretching, speedy receiver that is kind of like a Deshaun Jackson or a Will Fuller type that really stretches the field and super fast. I think Jonathan Mingo is the best X type receiver for Panthers. When it comes to Waller, I 100% agree with you. Waller's probably going to be the primary receiving target for Daniel Jones, and these two guys being added to the team is going to be a huge difference, potentially make his game move forward. And if it doesn't, I mean, at this point, that would just be on Daniel Jones. He's got the coaching staff. He's got a decent offensive line. He's now got these two new weapons. He should be pretty good this year, or it's on him. With Carolina, they need to go back to that quick throwing because their offensive line is not good. So they need to get the ball out as fast as possible. It would be interesting if they brought in another running back to help out when Sanders comes back and keep the ball away from Bryce Young so he doesn't get killed by these giant linemen that are in the pros. So I think that they have weapons that if their offensive line issues or if they can speed up the pass, that they could still be good. But if for whatever reason the play breaks down or Bryce Young holds onto the ball too long, he's putting himself in a dangerous situation, especially with his size.
Completely agree, and I don't like to hear that. If I'm being honest.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the Falcons and Bengals matchup. Not a super lot on the Bengals side, but we got to see some Bijan Robinson with the Falcons. Jeff, what were your takeaways in this matchup?
So Robinson is still number 3 on the depth chart. Is that a good takeaway from this game?
No, clearly not.
So basically the depth charts are not any good or any help at this point in the offseason. Ritter looked okay. He did get an interception off of a tipped pass, but so he's going to have to cut down on mistakes like that, especially since he's got the last 3 years he's got a first round tight end, a first round wide receiver, and a first round running back. So he's got a lot of first round weapons that a lot of teams don't ever give out. So there is that. So Ritter's expectations are sky high. This is his make or break year 2. They obviously have all the weapons around him right now. So what that means is that if he fails this year, he's pretty much done because they put everything around him that they possibly could in order to make him successful. So sink or swim. And it does look like the Bengals' backup running back job is up for grabs. I know in a previous podcast we talked about Mixon's backup. And yeah, good luck figuring out who that's going to be.
I still think it's Chris Evans going into this year. Chase Brown, yes, he got the touchdown, but I don't think that he hasn't really impressed me. A rookie who looks like he's finally impressing is Andre Estevas. I hope I said that right. It's a difficult looking name to pronounce, but he's finally showing up, and he's someone that I liked a little bit going into the draft process, but I don't think he was on my top players that I mentioned. So I like him a little bit, and it's interesting to see him go out and perform because we don't know if Higgins is going to get resigned. We don't know if Tyler Boyd's going to be resigned. So we're looking at in the future, for at least dynasty purposes, or maybe next year redraft, maybe someone like Andre could be a very interesting third wide receiver for the Bengals. But as far as running backs go, I think the backup to Mixon is Evans, and then it's Chase Brown. On the Falcons side, I don't know you're chuckling at the Desmond Ritter situation because you, as a Panthers fan, don't want them to succeed and you don't think Desmond Ritter is the guy. So I know that you're chuckling over there. I think Desmond Ritter still has a chance. They do have Taylor Heineke as well. I know that they're going to, with that rushing blocking offensive line, that they are going to try to run the ball down opponents' throats with Bijan, with Tyler Algier. I haven't seen a lot of Patterson. So I wonder if they're going to use Patterson as a running back or receiver, or if they're going to eventually cut him if they don't want to use him. That's going to be interesting as well. I would like to see Drake London have a good year, and he did get some good targets, but I just don't know if the volume is going to be there. Kyle Pitts has been disappointing since his rookie year. He had that huge explosion his very first year in the league and has done not much sense. So I would like to see more from him as well. I just don't know if the passing volume is going to be there, and it's difficult to tell from preseason.
Yeah, we will see. But as I said, make or break year. This is it. So we'll see.
Okay, just a couple more matchups for you guys here. We have the Browns versus Eagles, and we have the familiar names to bring up. That Dorian Thompson-Robinson definitely looks like he earned the backup job. It's hard for him to supplant Deshaun Watson, especially since Deshaun Watson has so much guaranteed money. Cedric Tillman looked good again. He is a guy that I really liked, and just like his teammate Jalen Hyatt, his college teammate Jalen Hyatt, they both seem to be adjusting sooner than expected in the NFL. So I'm wondering if he can potentially be the number 3 wide receiver over Peoples-Jones. I don't know yet, but he is certainly earning a spot on this roster at a minimum. The 4th wide receiver, rookie second year Austin Watkins came out of nowhere, in my opinion, with 14 targets, and he put up a lot on the stat board. Sermon, 2 games, 2 touchdowns. He's trying to stick around in this very deep Philly backfield. So we have no idea who the backup running back for the Browns is, and we have no idea who the starting running back is for Philly. Jeff, how do you feel about all of these guys and situations, and do you have any other takeaways from this matchup?
So, I had to add a sermon note in today, and I know you got a good chuckle about it. We know who the Browns' backup quarterback is. We do not know who the Browns' backup running back is. So that job just seems to be completely wide open. We don't know how their wide receiver room shakes out after Moore and Cooper. Assuming Moore is the number 2, I guess. And then it does seem like Watson does have some sort of connection in practice with Peoples-Jones. So that's an interesting connection because he does give me a little bit of Will Fuller vibes, and we know how Will Fuller did with Watson. What went through your head when I said that? Because clearly not all good thoughts.
No, I'm not a huge fan of Will Fuller. I didn't want the Texans to draft him. I thought he had ball tracking issues. So there's just some mixed feelings about the Will Fuller comment. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, he still isn't with a team at all, so he's just chilling out there still. So the last thing I will reiterate what you said with Austin Watkins. He kind of came out of nowhere and appeared to be a bit of a target monster. So interesting little tidbit there.
And then last game to talk about is the Titans versus the Vikings. And it looks like the Vikings played only the backups. The Titans also played mostly backups as well. And For some reason, they didn't play Will Levis at all. They played pretty much Willis the whole time. It looks like they just focused on running as much as possible and wore out the clock, is essentially what happened. Willis did get a lot of yards on the ground.
Yeah, he did. They did
So
win
I thought
too.
that was
They
interesting.
won.
Yep.
I think Levis actually came down with an injury in the joint practices on Thursday. So I do think that's why. So I think he was supposed to play half the game, and I think this is why Willis played the full game, is because Levis wasn't available.
You sure he wasn't filming for his Mayo endorsement deal?
Hey, he's definitely got a lifetime supply of mayo now.
As far as far as notable performances from this game, TJ Spears looked great to me. Julius Chestnut looked good as well. He may be the number 3 running back and may have beat out Hassan, which is interesting. Tyson Chandler got several rushes, but I couldn't find any wiggle room there. Outside of that, I don't think that there was that much to target onto. Chig did get a nice grab. TJ did get a target, and that's nice, but none of the other wide receivers that we want to fill in while Trey is out, Trey Burks is out the first couple weeks, did much on their target. So Chris Moore didn't catch anything. Westbrook didn't catch anything. And really no one of note got much on the Vikings side either.
Yeah, it's really hard for them to do anything when their quarterback gets 85 total passing yards. So,
Well, I mean, Nick Mullins on the Vikings side threw for 151 yards, and Jaron Hall threw for 49 yards, and really none of the Vikings receivers looked very impressive either. So,
yeah,
although Dwayne McBride, the rookie running back there, did get one catch for 11 yards. He's probably the RB3 there behind Madison and Chandler.
absolutely. Absolutely. And we don't know how Madison actually will handle being the guy. And I believe that he's had like 6 or 7 career starts prior to this maximum. So I think Madison is going to be a really interesting case study this year, that like you're going to move off of an all pro for unproven guy that we don't know can handle the workload. We'll see if that pays off for the Vikings, that saving that little bit of money.
All right, guys. Well, that does it for our wrap up of week 2 of the preseason. So that has done it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading or listening to this episode. Please do not forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
As always, you can find us with our handle at N2EFantasy on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads. Please give us a follow. And until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.